ClaDun X2 is a game about grinding, and I mean serious grinding. The plot is this: for your sins you've been trapped in Arcanus Cella. It's a miniature world where you have to fight in endless dungeons, and you'll come across other characters who are stuck there with you. The game's not about plot though, it's about endless customization. You've got a selection of classes to pick for your main character, such as the warrior, wizard, saint, guardian, ranger, merchant and sword mage. All of these classes have got different abilities, magic and job skills, not to mention they all have different stats. Then you've got to pick the general look of the character and a personality trait. I chose narcissism as a personality trait. It doesn't really have an effect on the gameplay, it's more about influencing the conversations you have, and it's really just for laughs, to be honest. You'll also be able to choose how your character looks, and you can at any time change your character's appearance from the in-game menu. The dungeons is really what the game is about. You might be surprised to find that some of the dungeons, the earlier ones, you can finish in less than 30 seconds. But this is actually a big plus for the game. The formula goes a little bit something like this. You beat a few dungeons, gain experience for your party, you find some items, you get some gold, and then you use these to help you progress and do it all over again with harder dungeons, as you unlock new ones from beating the old ones. Now the music in the dungeons, I feel tempted to say, is maybe the best I've ever heard in a role-playing game, with the possible exception of Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. Although there is a lot more variety in this game's music, nothing makes you feel more like an adventurer than this track. As you'll have noticed, this game has got a lot of retro charm going for it. Everything in the game looks retro, especially the monsters. You'll get a variety where you have things like frogs that will jump out and attack you with their long tongue, knights that are impervious to damage from the front, spiders that shoot webs at you and slow you down, giant boars that have these attack patterns that you can memorise so you can attack them from different directions. You've got nimble archers that shoot arrows at you, cats that have deadly claw attacks, and there are some weird ass things I can't even describe. When you're not fighting in dungeons, you'll soon be able to access everything in the game just from your menu. You can go to all of the world's locations, like the shops, like the magic circles, we'll talk about that shortly, just from the menu. Or you can go to it by navigating through the tiny world of Arcanus Cella. Now obviously there are a lot of different weapons in the game. You've got swords. These allow you to do 2 quick attacks, followed up by a third, slower, more powerful attack, simply by pressing the attack button 3 times in a row. Daggers allow you to have a lot of repeated quick attacks, but they've got almost no range. Blunt weapons like the axes and the clubs, while they allow you to do a very powerful slow attack, but you can't defend yourself, because you can't use a shield, it's a 2-handed weapon. You've got spears, which are tricky, but they're very similar to swords, they're just a lot slower, and they've got longer range. It's difficult to hit the enemy with them though, because they move so slowly, these spear attacks. Bows are very useful if you want to try and spam attacks from a little bit of range so that you don't get hit by the enemies. And staffs allow for magic attacks, which take a while between your attack to recharge. But you can have elemental based effects against certain enemies, which reminds me a lot of things like Pokemon actually. You can use the shop to buy new weapons, shields, armour and artefacts. We'll talk about artefacts shortly. But what I want to tell you about is that you'll find plenty of weapons in the dungeons, but you have the option to buy some of them in the shop too. You'll find yourself constantly using different weapons as you switch between different characters with different classes and job skills in your party. For instance, for my main character, the Comic-Con, who is a sword mage, I find particularly good with swords, the spear and the bow, because these are all the sword mage's abilities. But this game, as I mentioned, has a party system. You can create as many characters you want at any time in the menu. Their usefulness and the size of your party is determined by magic circles that you use. And as with everything else, that is determined by how many dungeons you've beaten. That is, what magic circles you have access to. The key to this game is constant progression and changing of your tactics every few dungeons. Right, now let's talk about the magic circles. Magic circles may be the most important game mechanic. Basically, they allow you to constantly change up your party stats and to focus on different strategies. For instance, if you place the relevant artifacts you find in dungeons or buy in a shop onto relevant spots on the magic circle, you can change your party's stats. For instance, defense artifacts go on defense spots and attack artifacts go on attack spots. As you beat more dungeons, you'll gain access to more magic circles, and the best thing you can do in this game is to change up your characters every few dungeons, and to change up the magic circles along with them. You'll always be swapping out for better equipment for your characters, for better artifacts, and for better magic circles. And for this reason, they're a great way to strategize, and they add a lot of variation to the game. In dungeons, you'll come across bosses. This is just the second boss. It's a giant tree thingy. Like any boss, it's got a lot of powerful attacks, and it will kill you in seconds if you don't come up with your best tactics. I guarantee you that you'll want to come back for more punishment for every time you get your ass kicked by a boss. For instance, my tactic here was to use the fire magic attack a few times before my SP started to run out, and then with my last bit of SP to attack him with my spear and use the flame weapon magic, and of course stay as mobile as possible because he'll keep spamming attacks at you every half second. Boss battles are always going to be over very quickly, just like the dungeons themselves, so you're going to need quick reflexes, and I recommend for the early bosses at least to skid around a lot to avoid all the hits, because what you really need is a half second to think about your next move. If you didn't think you were going to get enough grinding in this game, well, you're wrong. Soon you're going to unlock something called rangens. These come in two types, a neogen and a trigen. They are 99 floor, randomly generated dungeons, and the only difference is that a trigen is basically 3 neogens stuck together. If you think you're good at this game, take on a trigen. You'll get your ass handed to you on a silver plate. Alright, so to progress to the next floor inside a trigen or a neogen, you'll come across these things called gates. These include angel gates and devil gates, and they can change at any time. So for instance, you choose a devil gate, then you might be lucky and it will turn into an angel gate randomly at the last second. The gates determine the monster level, the item drop rate, and the rare title rate. Titles are very important because they allow you to upgrade your weapons. They give you stat bonuses like HP +1, defense +1, and things of that nature. So this is really the main point of trying to beat a neogen or a trigen, is to unlock more titles so you can get more powerful weapons. As I mentioned earlier, this game really isn't about the story. It's more like grinding on top of grinding, with a side order of grinding, with a dessert of grinding. Anyway, you do sometimes get some cutscenes, which are pretty much in the way of conversations you have between the other characters stuck in this world, and these can be pretty funny. The conversations you have are sometimes based around your personality trait. So when I picked my narcissistic main character, the Comic-Con, I can get some pretty damn funny lines. There's really no point, as I mentioned before, to the personality traits. They're really just for fun. Now you'll see that this game has the most amazing, beautiful retro graphics. It has an amazing soundtrack that really makes you cry tears. And it's the biggest appeal here is the grinding, as I said. If you don't like grinding, you're not going to like this game. It's a huge grind fest. But if you do, this is probably your dream game.